actress, model, country.
Gorgeous, beautiful, looks like Lana Evangelista.
Hi, welcome to Unboxed. I am Ace, co-host, and I am...
You're a captain of our kickball team.
Oh yeah, I am. Yeah, yesterday we won both of our games.
Both.
Like,
Yes. Yeah. I'm Wes with Unboxed, and we're joined with...
I am Landon Patterson, or you can call me Lana Luxx, or just Lana.
And bonjour, bitches. I'm Candice Marie, coming in from the waves of the Philippines.
Yes.
Yeah. Which relationship did you learn the most about sex?
Oh. Ooh.
Like, which relationship?
Pornhub.
We're still dating.
They've been a strong 10 years.
It's my one constant, baby.
Oh my goodness.
You can count on it, yeah.
I'm just saying. It's my relationship with the internet.
Food. No, I'm just kidding.
Like, I don't know. You weren't alive yet because you're, a lot younger than...
I know.
I know we don't look like it because we're like
We look like
practically
twins.
But I am 10 years older than her. And I remember being online and just like waiting, like downloading like a naked photo and just waiting for,
Just to like look at it?
just to look at it. That was at the beginning when it was like AOL and they had that whole like dinner.
not magazines.
Yeah, you remember. And then literally like the internet disconnecting when like
I remember
someone picks up the phone and is like, put it down!
Oh my god,
Yes.
So that's where you learn the most about sex?
From porn? Yeah.
Yeah, but there's no particular relationship you feel like you've been in and like you really got to like learn what you like and like your body or what you felt confident in? Not me asking questions. Candice is very reserved about sex and our friendship, and I get blurbs of her like sexual free-spirited side, which I live for, but she definitely like, just as much as we're best friends, she's kind of like an older sister. So there's certain things I feel like she doesn't always show off. She's not like, ooh, I just got the best dick of my life, as opposed to me, I'm calling Candice like,
she's like,
oh my god, but Candice like keeps some of her like preserved.
Pixar didn't happen.
So I want to know these things about her because I love when she opens
And meanwhile,
up.
I'm just over here like, yeah, I had a really great cuddle session. It was like,
We braided each other's hair. We got to American Idol. It was so cute.
did foot massages. It was lovely.
But yeah, so I wanted to know, but I guess
No, that's like I said, there's parts of me that are always going to be private.
Oh yeah,
I like to keep it a mystery.
I feel like I've always been surrounded by so much like openness and sexuality, and like kind of growing up in San Diego as a young queer kid, and like having LA so close and meeting a lot of like porn actors at that time, where like there was no OnlyFans, there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook, so like coming out as gay and young and cute and like navigating and seeing and like me moving on from that, but also like I don't know, like I learned a lot just from being around the people that I'm with that are open, and
yes.
I think I've been very lucky to be able to met a lot of people that are very sexually free, sex positive, and have really good friends that I can like directly ask questions to.
That's really
and not feel ashamed about it. I went to Dallas last weekend or whatever. Like 2 days before I went to Dallas, a guy that I hooked up with last week, he's like, "Oh my god, I just tested positive for gonorrhea." I was like, "Fuck." So I called Wes immediately and was like, "Hey, how do I get into the clinic? Like, is there an open walk-in? Because I really need to get like this done before I go to Dallas." And so, but also I was thinking like, that's such a normal conversation for me and for my friends that like, and like you said, even calling your girlfriend, like, I've called friends like, "Oh my god, I met this dude last night, we had the most crazy sex and his dick was so big," or like, "Oh my god, he was so bad and his breath stank, don't ever," like, but being open and having that conversation, and like, it's so normalized for me and my friends.
And like queer culture.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of people that don't get that. I would say that's like part of education, and I feel like that's something like the normalizing those conversations and making it like stigma free. Like a lot of people I think are really scared to talk about sex in general, not just because they're private, but because they maybe are embarrassed or don't want to be shamed for whatever kink or fetish or things that they have. But also I think that's a really huge detriment to our community, because in turn people won't ask for help when they do contract an STI, or have some things that they need to work on, or even have questions about where to get treatment or where to even seek like tests. And I think that the more that we normalize that and do it, the more healthier and safe it will all be.
Well, there's that stigma associated with like STDs and telling your friends about it or talking
The
about
dirty
it.
and clean.
Yeah,
People still do that.
Yeah, like, it has nothing to do with that. STDs don't care about any of that stuff.
No.
It's a human problem. Like, it's like if you don't talk about it, you're not going to solve it. You're not going to fix it.
And the reality too is like if you are sexually active, you've more than likely at one point in your life had some kind of STI or like at least a scare.
Well, it's good to be like knowledgeable about those things because like I've been like with like guys and like I'm very sexual, you know, from the community. I'm like I feel like I play like devil's advocate because like or not devil like I'm like in this blurry line because it's like I identify as like a cis or not a cis. I identify as a trans woman.
Like a cis.
SIS.
Yeah, I identify as like a trans woman who like is closer towards the like not straight. Like I mostly date straight cisgender men typically, and so I'm like dating guys who like I'll say some things like when was like the last time you got tested or like ask things like that, and to them that's like what? Or these like straight guys are like, well, I've like never been tested. And I'm like, what? And they're like, well, I would know if I had something. I'm like, no. Like, and I'm like over here like playing sex ed teacher, and I'm like teaching.
To be honest, I think that also has to do with like the regionality of where we are in America. Because like when I was in Florida, I just felt like when I lived in Florida, I felt like a lot of the kids were more active, and you know, it was something that was just like normalized, I guess. But when I moved here to like Kansas, Missouri area, all of a sudden everyone's like, oh my god, the only relationship I have is with Jesus. The only time I get on my knees.
Boy I met in high school, yeah.
But then it's like, you know, we go through we go through like, you know, like middle school and high school, and like we learn about, you know, like
girl, we get like one shitty video and it's like, girl, you have a period.
Literally, it's like
it gets hard.
Like here's a hairy vagina with like a baby coming out of it. Sex ed done. It's like no,
I didn't like that.
You know, I feel like, but I feel like these are the things that we should have learned also when we were like younger. Like I don't need to fucking know that, you know, like A squared plus B squared is equals C squared. When the fuck am I ever gonna use that? Like what I need to learn is how to do my taxes. I need to know like how to get rid of things. Yeah, how to have safe sex. Like you know what I mean?
What are we talking about?
Yeah. We're talking about like, a lot of stuff. I mean, it's June, so it's Pride Month.
Mm-hmm.
Happy
Pride!
Happy Pride!
Yeah, I wanted to originally speak with you and talk about you both being Asian American, and you know, obviously, you know, presenting differently, but what that looks like, also part of queer culture and our queer community, and what that's look like. Let's talk about that first. We'll talk about 2020 COVID, the impact that it had like on your families, and the impact that it had on you. Obviously, as performers, that definitely took a drastic turn when you all had to figure out a different way to navigate all of your talents and, you know, being able to make money because we weren't able to meet in spaces.
Yeah, you had to redesign your drag.
Yeah.
The way you performed it. Yeah, presented it.
I remember when the pandemic first started, the last show that we did, I think was like, it was a trivia or something like that. And then I remember going up to Lana and saying, hey, like, why don't we try to do something like on a Facebook Live or something? And like literally a couple of days after everything was like supposedly shut down. Yeah. And so we kind of did this show called like Bon Jour, where I interviewed like a bunch of like the different entertainers just about the most random stuff, and put our handles and stuff at the bottom so we could still get like, tipped and Venmo and stuff like that. Yeah. Because it was really hard not doing anything, quite honestly. I think we were on the phone like every day for like 4 hours a day.
And we'd like watch movies together on FaceTime.
Aww.
What movies?
And we would literally be like, okay, you ready? 3, 2, 1, play.
And we would watch at the same
And now they have watch parties so you can do it together.
Yeah.
On Netflix?
Yeah, they do.
Netflix, yeah.
They do.
We started it.
We did. We were the inventors.
We were doing the bootleg watch party.
Watch out, Netflix, they're coming for you, so get your lawyers ready.
But it was literally that though, the pandemic that did that, which is why we were like on FaceTime every day. And it got to the point where now, like, all the entertainers, like, in the city, if any of us are, like, in a group that are, like, performing that evening, it doesn't matter whether they're in bar A, B, or C, we will all literally FaceTime each other at the same time.
Nobody gets ready really at the bar anymore to all kiki. Everyone's, like, on FaceTime getting ready.
I love that.
Just because, like, we got used to just talking to each other all the time, and it's like, why lug around 40 pounds of makeup when you can just do it at the comfort
and you don't want to, like, pack your bag. Bitch, I feel like that's kind of why a lot of us also typically will just, like, not lately because of COVID, we're excited to be back out, but
yeah.
And it just clicked to me. That's kind of like, I feel like why everyone just, like, leaves after the show, or, like, why I do, because I'm like, girl, we got to kiki the whole 2 hours before the show.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And during the show, mostly, like, I don't need to stare at them sit at the bar and chat with them.
Literally.
Just, like, so
right.
it's like, anyway.
Do you feel like you have a closer relationship because you spent that time?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I mean, before, like, doing the show and... I mean,
yeah,
like if you're drinking,
I feel like it's made me closer to, like, obviously Candice, but other people. I feel like the pandemic made me closer to my mom, like, with, like, not doing shows, and my mom is a nail tech, so she works. So, like, I'm a performer, showgirl, drag queen, whatever you want to call it. And then during the day, I'm a licensed esthetician, so I work at Sephora, and I actually just did a job change because I was a arch expert, waxing brows at Ulta, switched back to Sephora, my first home, literally got chopped, like, then we shut down, then no drag, no day job, so, like, and my mom's a nail tech, like I said, so she didn't have a job, and we're, like, at home, and, like, me and her, like, if I wasn't on the phone with Candice hanging out with her, you know, like, I was, like, literally got to, like, I binge watched all the seasons of Pose with my mom.
Aww.
And it was so cool to, like, share that with her, and, like, her to, like, one, get educated, like, on, like, ballroom, on a lot of trans issues, queer issues, like, predominantly, like African American cast, and, like, see their struggles and journeys, because we obviously know the struggles and journeys of, like my mom, and it's growing up, like, from, like, an Asian standpoint, like, Japanese, but also very white passing, still dealing with, like, a lot of systemic just opinions and some shitty stuff, so I feel like it opened her mind to a lot of things, and it was just cool to spend that much time with her, because we were always so, like, with drag, you're go, you feel like you're never home, so it was cool to, like, sit back and refresh, like, low-key, when there was always rumors that was second lockdown, I was like, bitch, I'm ready. I'm ready to hang out with my mom. And chill, you know?
I really didn't mind it. I mean, we were finding very unique ways of doing things. Connor Tierney is an amazing videographer.
Yeah.
He is, like, one of my closest friends, and he has helped this entire city, you know, produce a lot of content in this entire city. And, like, when we did Survivor and it was all digital, like, you could see his work.
And, like Beto Arroyo, and, like, his video work, and, like, the virtual drag brunches, and then, like, Cynthia Doll, and, like, just, like, the drag scene, it was really cool to come together. It was an adjustment, because I'll be honest, I love my music video fantasy, and I'd love to do that, like, later on in the career, but, like, bitch, nothing feels better to me than being on stage with that live reaction.
Oh my god.
Like, getting that, like, I was so unmotivated to, like, do some of the live performances, not necessarily pre-recorded, edited music video fantasy, but some of the, like, live performances, like, it was really hard and unmotivating to, like, get into.
Like, for example, if this was on streaming live
and performing right now,
and we have to perform, like, I'd be like,
and, like, it was different, and everyone's struggling, so you're getting, like, $1 tip, and it felt good, but it felt better to do, like, the pre-recorded stuff, or, like, to be back on stage. Like, that's, like, I truly do drag for the live reaction of the people, and, like, that to feed off of that, and, like, it felt so good to finally, like, even
the 50% that we could have, like,
that was everything.
You were like, you're screaming at me,
yes, girl, like, back when we, like, were first starting drag, girl, performing in a trivia in front of, like, 3 tables was everything.
Oh my
God. I would take that over, like, doing, like, going back to live numbers, like, I think, I would rather perform in front of, like, a table of 3.
Like live numbers performing for your cacks.
Because you actually had to, like, go in and do it, like, that you really, like, with virtual drag and COVID drag and everything, you really had to be kind of self-disciplined, and, like, and same with, like, doing shows like this, it's really, like, being your own boss, and it's a lot easier to be like, hey, you have a show tonight at 10:30, you have to show up, as opposed to, like, get in drag and go record yourself and edit all your videos and do all your shit. It's like,
brand your content, push your boat.
Yeah, hope people can afford to tip you, you know, because a lot of us were doing this as a big source of our income, not like a cute hee hee ha, like not mostly. it's like not just a hobby anymore. So it was
It's
it was a big
for
impact
some
on
of us,
some
yeah.
of us. So I was like,
That was something I've been wondering, like, what your response, the feedback from viewers, like, did people tip well? Did you get a lot of positive comments? Like,
The comments are always like positive, I think, because they're free. You know, like you can type it in and you can be like, oh my god, hey, that was amazing.
It was a free girl.
Hearts or likes.
It's free.
and it felt good. And there were some that like would always tune in and watch and always try to like make sure they tipped the girls, which like was really sweet and like getting to do Daisies was good.
Yeah, and in the middle of all of that, bitch, if I got $1, I'm like, bitch.
Like, you were content with it because it's like everyone's
so everyone was broke.
Because I felt bad sometimes. I'm like, who am I to be like, hey, tune in and watch this and like tip me when like, bitch, we're all like struggling.
Yeah.
And if you can afford a tip, yay. But like, it's also was nice, I guess, like someone could watch the live and maybe they couldn't afford a tip, but they could leave a nice comment and like that took them away, you know?
Yeah. And
so
that was one of the biggest things too, is like, you know, we would put our handles at the bottom of like the videos and stuff. And people would share it. And
we would get followers.
Yeah, and then like there's also like merchandise and stuff that came out. Like I feel like people got a little bit more artistic as far as like these are the different things that I'm going to do, not just making videos, but you know, like doing art, like for merchandise and this and that. And people just had to figure out a way of doing things. Like Cynthia Doll came out with a whole fucking album. Like,
and
you know what I mean?
she makes sick
the whole album.
Just threw it together.
I mean, I liked it and I thought it was really important. Number one, when I saw that all happening and the unfolding, especially with the last track Survivor, where it all had to be virtual, number one, I thought it was so creative, it was so out of the box. And then I want to switch a little gears right now, maybe talk a little bit about, we'll start with Candice. This is going to get a little bit like political, a little bit deep. You know, being Asian American and going through COVID, I know, you know, there was a lot of backlash for Asian culture. You know, our president was calling it, you know, the Chinese flu and all these things. And, you know, we've had some past guests on here too that said, even in the queer space, like he walked by a table and some older white man, you know, like said some racist remarks like concerning COVID. And I didn't know.
Because he was Asian?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so
I had that happen to me and Joey Evans too.
Yeah, I mean,
people say crazy shit.
Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to like, share some examples? Do you want to, you know, how did your family deal with it? Is that something that you talked to with your family?
Most of my family is in the Philippines. It's actually only my family that lives here in America. And while everything was kind of happening, I think I don't really know how to put this, but like when I don't have like the makeup or anything on, a lot of people get confused on what I am to begin with. They don't know if I'm Asian, if I'm like Middle Eastern, if I'm, you know, Mexican, Hispanic, like, you know what I mean?
Why'd you say Mexican? Mexican.
Like,
that's very pointed.
They just don't know what I am. Like, and I'm like, okay, like people have thought that I was half black. And I'm like,
people come up to you and like try to like speak Portuguese or Spanish, you're like, not like 100% no.
Slow down.
I'm not at either of those.
I've gotten everything under the sun. And I think, as far as I had to get a job, obviously, to try and like support myself when the pandemic first started, and I think I was very self-conscious about being an Asian person during the time of the pandemic, which is why I was very thankful that we could wear masks so that people couldn't like really tell what I was. It was just very uncomfortable seeing the things like popping up on Facebook left and right. Social media has gotten like super involved in our lives, specifically during the pandemic, because none of us had shit to do. And some of you still don't have shit to do other than to fucking type on your computer.
Just hate.
But, you know, exactly. You're still bored. But that's the reason why, I don't know, like for me personally, like wearing like a mask around, and it's always been kind of something that's kind of, I've been weary of since I first like moved here to America. I went through the whole thing of like attempting so hard to like lose my accent from the Philippines, you know, and now I kind of wish that I still had it, because now that I'm older, I'm like, God, that made me unique, and now I just sound like fucking everybody else. And you know, it's always a hardship, specifically living like in Asia when you're always taught, like in the Philippines, you know, like when you go to America, it's the land of this and that, and you know, like, you want to be a nurse and move there so that you can send money back home, and then like, you know what I mean? Like America has always been like this dream place, and then being here and then being looked down on, especially during the time of COVID, it's kind of like, man, well, I don't really belong anywhere because, you know what I mean?
Were you ever targeted, or were you ever like around where somebody did or said something that, you know? Like,
to be honest, I was just surrounded. I surrounded myself. The first and foremost thing that I did is surround myself with, you know, my family and like my good Judies and all that kind of stuff. And the first thing I did was make masks for like everybody. Like, you know what I mean?
Aww.
If you have the skill set to do it, which I sew thanks to GB Couture Mulan. And so while I was at home, that was what I was like, like friends, family, here you go. And that's also another source of income that, you know, people like Jessica Dressler contacted me and said, hey, I know you sew. Are you sewing masks? And I'm like, yeah. And she was like, how much do you want to sell them for? I said, I don't fucking, like, these are scrap pieces, girl. You want them?
$300.
No, the thing is, she gave me like $120. Like $120 for like 10 of them. And I was like, what?
Work.
But, you know, it's just like the way that people like want to look out like for each other and stuff. And luckily enough, I didn't really experience a lot of like the negativity, but mostly because I was at home like I was supposed to be. So.
But then, like, afterwards, when we could go out?
When we could go out, I didn't really get much either, but I guess because either people were just afraid to say something to me, or...
And like, we're always in, like, a queer space.
And we're always in a group.
And most of the time, it's...
That was going to be my other question. Like, are you with other people, or... Yeah.
And I think that's kind of just something that we learned as queer people, is that you always travel in groups. You never want to be, you know, by yourself just in case anything happens. I mean... Even when we leave the bars, you know, some of our friends will be like, "Do you want us to walk you to your car? Like, we'll carry your bag." Like, you know what I mean?
No, and I have like cis friends. Like, when I do go out to straight bars and like want to go to Westport, and like, you know, sometimes I like to take a break from the gay scene. Like, I want to like be around more people, like more of like my like dating pool, like. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I feel like I'm always around gay men or drag queens. You know? So, which isn't a bad thing, but like, I'll have like my friends will be like, okay, and a lot of times because we work on weekends and we work late nights, it's like, okay, meet us out right after you get out of the show, and like, I'll have my girlfriends like, oh yeah, meet us at the bar, Landon, and like, go wait in the line, and I'm like, you're gonna make me, and they don't realize it because they're like straight, cis women. A lot of times I'm like, I'm a trans woman. And you want me to go wait outside in Westport in the line by myself and something slutty and something skimpy, like alone, and like I have all these fears. But like, you know, you just don't think of those things. But that was just so kind of random off topic.
And I mean, like, to be honest, it's kind of like scary just like going out in situations like that in general. Like Lana and I have each other's locations on.
Just in case.
Just in case.
You know, if I go somewhere dumb.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
that's smart.
The one that's smart, that also speaks to, like, the fear that's out there. That something can happen to you because of the way you identify, the way you present. And you have to take these extra steps.
No,
that other individuals don't have to take to protect themselves.
No, and I feel like people don't, like, realize that sometimes. And, like, so I feel like during the not my hair everywhere. During the pandemic, so, like, me and my mom were obviously both at home and stuff. And, so my grandma's Japanese, my mom's half, so I'm 25% Japanese. And me, like, I mean, I'm very much white passing, and I also, now obviously after surgeries, I do most of the time, like, pass to where, in a sense, people think, like, I'm, like, a cis woman. In most cases, sometimes, like, just from, like, a quick glance, so, but obviously there's others who don't, but, like, I remember, like, obviously seeing all this stuff online, hearing the president talk about things like that, and, you know, like, it just made me think of, like, the stories, like, my mom would tell, like, getting, like, made fun of, and, like the prejudices she's faced for being Asian, and then, like, being around my grandma, and, like, seeing how people would treat her, like, in public, or, like, going places, like, when she'd speak, because obviously she, like, her English was a little broken, and people sometimes mistake that for being stupid or not knowing, and like obviously growing up with all that, and then having my own issues, like being younger and experience. Because I feel like when I was younger, I looked more like people would look at me and obviously like be like, oh, I can tell you're like Asian. And then, you know, like being younger and like being brunette and like all of those things, I feel like I low-key have like, you know, there's all those like cis white beauty standards, and you kind of see on TV like the blonde white girl always gets her way, like the
as you all look at both of us right now,
like, and I feel like I low-key like turned like, you know, and plus being a little boy and then transitioning into a woman and like wanting to be like that stereotypical thing of femininity. What is that? Barbie, like the white blonde blue eye, like, you know, I feel like I've forced myself into this like, you know, for safety, for survival, and for, you know, because you see how trans women are treated, especially trans women of color specifically, and like black trans women. But like seeing that and like seeing how just trans in general, seeing how Asian people are treated, all those things. So I don't know, I just remember during the pandemic, like we have this like Chinese restaurant we always get food from, and like we would order from it a lot because it's like a lot of businesses struggled, but a lot of Asian-owned businesses struggled. And to see like sushi places open now and little hole-in-the-wall places still open, you're like, thank God, because a lot fell.
There's a lot of them that closed
during
this city.
And people thought like, oh, am I gonna get COVID from eating there? Am I
Oh my God.
And like treating Asian.
Girl, in America, the ignorance runs so deep.
It's
No.
so
God,
deep.
serious?
They really
And
thought.
literally, I'm sorry, like
Yeah.
it literally triggered me when you said something about like just because my grandma had like broken English, like people thought she was dumb. First and foremost, like
They're smart. They're learning two languages.
languages.
They're processing two at
like
once.
you're judging
Barely.
someone off of your one language that you know.
Exactly.
And the amount of words that you know in your language, not only do they know in their own language, but they're learning much more in your own.
Yes.
Their vocabulary is twice as
Reading
much as
it.
what you have.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
the
No.
fuck?
And so I just like wanted to support them as much as possible, and then like also I feel like me specifically, like I feel like I said, a lot of the times no one ever really just I don't deal with a lot of the same things like Candice would deal with, as if like looking more like Asian or just like ethnic in general, I would say. So it's also like a struggle for me because sometimes like you feel this like imposter syndrome vibe, like because you have people telling you like you're not Asian enough, you don't look Asian enough, like when I'm tan right now, like I'm spray tan and stuff, and like I get tan in summer, but like people being like you're like, they assume like you're not really dark, and I'm like, well, I'm Japanese, like Japanese people aren't dark, but like, but you know what I mean, and like, but like feeling, then you start to think like, am I Asian enough? Like, should I even tell people I'm Asian? Like, because I've had people and other people say those things. And
But it's such a double standard of whichever you are, because if you're in America, you're not presenting Asian enough, and then if you're in actual Asia, it's like, why are you presenting like super Asian? Like, I remember going back to the Philippines and like being outside and just being like, oh my God, there's sun, I want to tan,
and they're like, you're
gonna
gonna
have
look
yayas,
poor.
and they're gonna be like, why are you tanning? Like, your skin is like lighter. Like, get out of the sun. And I'm like, no, bitch, I came to the Philippines to get a tan. Like, what?
Cultural differences.
No, literally, but like,
Yeah.
I went over there to, you know, soak up the sun, get darker. And then over there, it's like, no, don't get darker, because then you'll appear poorer. And then you move here to America and be like, have darker skin, because, you know, that's what the Kardashians and them portray.
Right, or like
You
that's
know,
what makes you
darker-
look.
That's what makes you, you know,
Look.
desirable. Like, you know, it's just so fucking confusing. Like, it depends on which region of the world you're actually at. And for me, it's just kind of like, you know what? I'm going to look in the mirror, and I'm going to look the way that I want to look. And whether that confuses you, like, that's on you.
And that's why, like, I love you, and I feel like, and Candice is like, and I love, like, Candice is like one of my best friend, and like Mulan, and like I've always felt so included with like Candice and Mulan. They've never made me feel like too white or too not like Asian enough. And like with my grandma being gone and stuff, like they like, oh my God, yeah,
I know too.
but like they include me on like, you know, like really authentic like Asian meals still, which like reminds me of my grandma, because growing up, like that's what she always did. She was always cooking and like authentic stuff and like introducing so many new things that like I don't have anymore. But like Candice and Mulan, they've always made me feel like I am like seen and I am Asian enough and like just cute. Oh, cute. You know, but you know, they don't make me feel, because everyone likes to discredit that because, they want to think, oh, Lana, you're just a white girl, or oh, you're just which I know the privilege I have, but it's nice to be around people that see your
Well, there's
color.
a couple of things that you said earlier, and I want to ask you about this conversation, and this is going to get a little bit intense, and I know that you said, before that, maybe like the stereotypical of how you look right now and what you're doing, your aesthetic with the blonde hair and, being tan and kind of Barbie, like the whole American ideal beauty of standard, and being a trans woman trying to mirror that, the biggest thing that I heard that I haven't heard, it was about also like safety, because I know, like looking like this, I know that even in any kind of cis world, this would be safer, that passable, that beauty standard of American culture, like being that is safe. That would be a safety thing for you, and I'm like, that's wild. But also, I wanted to touch a little bit about there was I don't even want to say it, like, you do at this point have a bit of a platform in the city and a little bit throughout, and so I remember this POC trans woman attacking you for not representing other POCs because you are a person of color as well, because you're part Japanese, and
made me feel not Japanese enough.
Yeah,
and
made you not feel like you were, but then also like you weren't doing enough. So it's like a very weird conversation, but also like, has that been something that someone else has talked to you or presented about? And what does that feel like to? I mean, you've worked so hard to come from where you're at, from where you come from, and to where you're at, and to live your life. And talking earlier about your ex-boyfriend and their family being, like against this whole gay thing and trans thing or whatever, and having to like not continually educate people, but also what does that feel like for that to come from your own community?
It kind of sucked. It sucked, and like that, I don't know, like it did suck because I feel like I'm always trying to I know what I do represent, but I'm also trying to like navigate my own journey, like you said, like and like I know I am a bigger head in the community, not a bigger head, like a someone people look to, but I'm also like trying to figure out my journey, and I've been trying to figure that out, and that's like what I'm saying. I'm trying to figure out, like, do I want to go the strictly advocate route? Do I want to go, like, I want to be like a fun, rated R, crazy bitch, not worry about those things, but I know, like, there's so many I don't knows, but, it did suck, and because I never want to offend people. I never want to look like, because that's something that was said, was like, oh, you're Asian when it's convenient to you. And it's like,
exactly.
One, I'm Asian when I go to bed and when I wake up. Yes, I am white passing, which I admit and I know, and like I say, I reap those benefits of, and that's like what I was saying with my look, the way I look is built too for safety, which when I go out to the bar, like, people know who I am, but 9 times out of 10 when I go out to places, they don't know I'm trans, and they think like, oh, I'm just some pretty blonde girl that want to hit on me. But also, because of the way I look, it puts me in even more unsafe situations. I come encounter, and I get to be face to face with men and people that don't know I'm trans, and they're talking shit about the next trans person. Or I get the opportunity to be face and face with men that don't know, who then in turn might hurt me, as opposed to so-and-so who doesn't go into those spaces, or people know they're trans immediately and they stay away. I get right up and personal with the bear, with the tornado. Like, I'm there, I'm in those things. And so I'm aware of that, and I've been trying to be better about, using my voice and like my privilege to pass that on to the spaces that don't get to see your everyday, like, Asian trans woman or Black trans woman or Latino trans woman. And so I try and do my part, but also there are still like the hiccups I have, and still like the issues I have with, like, I guess, I don't know, we're all going through it. And that's the thing, like, there's not one trans experience that is like all are valid, and that's what's important.
How do you figure out that whole, like that balance between like, walking your own journey, but also, having like power, privilege, platform, like how do you keep that balance so that you're not taking away from like growing as a person because you're, fighting battles for everyone else, or at least trying to be some kind of face or hub or people like that look to? Is there?
It's hard. I mean, like we just had, like sometimes I want to cry, and like I want to be like Candice, like think like
and crying is okay.
Like okay. I want to cry, and it's like thank you so much for seeing me, because if I were to have that conversation around some other people about that, I feel like they'd be like, oh, like they wouldn't see it. I feel like they wouldn't. I couldn't be vulnerable about that or talk about things like that because I feel like they would still just see me as like this my girl.
Because at the end of the day, like whoever these people are that are thinking this way have their own set way of thinking already, and if they've made like an assumption about you, that's probably the way that they're going to carry it for themselves. They have their own experience, which is their experience, but a lot of people don't take into consideration the other types of experiences that other have.
Right.
Like there are POCs that live their life as POCs, but they were born here in America, which is completely different from a POC who came here that was born from a different country. Just because you have similarities doesn't mean your journeys are exactly the same.
And like we need to like embrace that.
Yeah.
There's not like I like when they like came for me or when people do, it's like they like not everyone like Candice has the privilege and I have the privilege to know like Candice's like journey and she knows like some of the stuff I went through and like I think it's hard because on social media they see me, they see all the followers, they see the makeup and and they think, oh, this bitch has it easy. This like they don't understand that it hasn't always been easy. No, there's always someone who has it worse than you, but everyone's experience is valid. Like when you come home from an 8-hour work day and you're fucking tired and say we come home from just our 2-hour show and we're tired, those are both still valid. You know what I mean? So it's like I think people see what I put out because social media is fake most of the time, and I try to keep it real, and I have, but they like just assume, oh, she gets everything she's ever wanted. She'll, and oh, she's just white. They don't know like I was raised from a full Japanese woman and I've faced those battles, and they don't know that like the discrimination from being a trans woman, and then like the growing up with like a single parent and growing up with like a past of drugs and like not me, but like growing up in that environment and like being poor and low income and government housing, like all those things. They don't see those things or when they look at Candice
or care.
Or give a fuck. But they think they can say those things.
Because what they want to do is project their own insecurities. And I think that's the biggest thing is that a lot of people do have a lot of concerns, and a lot of the reasons why people do have all these like hateful things to say is because they're projecting things that they might feel about themselves that they're uncomfortable with. And you can look at Lana's Instagram and all this kind of social media and see this like perfect creature, but as the person who's like on the phone with her all the time and like hearing some of the things that like she goes, woo, here we go, girl.
Social media is a very, very curated like space for everyone to curate like the best highlights of your life. It's always, you're never going to see pictures on social media of like somebody crying and breaking down, because of grief or a breakup. It's always like, here's me and my most beautiful like airbrush, like filter, like and best friend poses.
Yeah, and it's not just even just social media. It's also just like in real life in general. Just because I got up on stage and performed the house down doesn't mean I'm not going home because I just broke up with someone 2 days ago. You know what I mean? Presenting ourselves the way that we are like to people is our job. Like we're in a job of media, so we have to show ourselves as yeah.
Right.
We're
it's
always
like you're damned
performing.
if you do and you're damned if you don't. Like I remember like when a big huge group of us from Mary's went to the Black Lives Matter protest, it was like this is important to all of us. We want to be on the right side of history. We want to fight for this. We want to fight for like our black friends, our black trans friends, like all of those things, and also just all of our friends of color, trans, like the meaning was so much bigger than that. And like it was all over social media, and it was all, you know what I mean? And there was that, if you're not posting about it, what the fuck are you doing? Are you silent? All those things, whatever. And I just remember being like, bitch, the whole point of posting is like, if I have 30,000 plus people knowing, I want them to know this is my belief, and if you don't like that, unfollow.
Yeah, because people are always asking you to, like, why aren't you being vocal? And then, like, literally 2 seconds later, someone will be like, the only reason you're posting is because...
Yeah, so it's like a double-edged thing.
What do you want me to do?
That's performative. That's performative, and all these things, and you're like...
Wow. What are you asking?
And I'm like, yeah, damn right I took a photo, because damn bitch, it could be in a history book one day, and it can let these bitches know what the fuck is going on in these times. Like, yeah, I'm going to document it, and yes, I'm going to let the people that follow me know, yes, I'm here, and this is what I believe, and if you don't like it, kick rocks. Or maybe they can read my post and learn, oh, Lana is Asian. Oh, Lana does stand with me. And you don't know how many, like, black trans women messaged me. Thank you so much for being there. Thank you so much for posting this. Thank you so much for you know, and other trans women, and just in general. It was so much more than that. It wasn't the, hee, look at me, like, I'm this. Bitch, it was like, this is a big picture, and yeah, I'm gonna fucking post it, because it has an impact.
Like, literally, we're right in the thick of things where we could have gotten, like, shot.
Into the thick of it.
Yeah. And you would think with queer individuals, they would realize that visibility is so important, and, like, seeing somebody support you, knowing that the person supports you means everything.
And intention, and knowing their intentions are good, and whether they're posting it to their 3 friends on Facebook, or their 3,000 friends, or 400,000, all of that matters, and it's important. Any visibility and any voice is important.
Exactly.
But I think people often either see others getting the limelight, or they see that like they didn't get the opportunity to do that, and they have the critiques and the opinions on how you
that
do
internalization of it, instead of taking it the other way and thinking, how does this better the community? How can I spread this message too?
Yeah, or instead of calling and like, oh my god, can I go with you guys?
Right. I have friends who called and was like, I don't want to go by myself, and I'm like, I'll go with you.
Right.
Like, you don't have to do that alone. That's the whole point. You
right. Instead of not going and then
you.
hating on you later because you went.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
Like, just thinking about like there's such a weird like, I don't know, like dynamic, because I remember, you know, back when we didn't have social media and I was young, and there was like really no even queer visibility on TV, and I remember like shows like Queer as Folk, even Will and Grace, and there were all the queer people rallied. They were like, oh my gosh, Ellen was on like before she had her talk show or actual TV show. People were like, there's queer representation. I don't ever remember back then being like, oh my god, Ellen, well, it might be better if she was black, you know, like, or it might be better if she was brown. It's fine that she's lesbian and she's queer, but like we need, you know, like I don't see that. Now I see like the representation we have a whole sector coming up and like complaining that like, yeah, we have visibility, but like our visibility is not good enough. But also like, I don't ever see anybody complaining, like doing anything to like make that better, except for just bitching about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's you always gotta have a solution.
Yeah.
If you ever,
it's
if you're
fine to have opinions,
upset about
like,
something,
if it's,
what are you gonna do about it?
like, fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think it is cool. I mean, now like the representation has grown a lot, and like representation is key. But I feel like there is less of just being excited about it. I feel like there's now that like we're in such a public domain to like give critiques, there's always something to say, because now we've gotten to a place, you know, like where it's awesome, like yeah, we have Ellen, but like now we have Pose, like now we have Legendary, now we have Them that was released, or what's that show on Netflix? It's like My Rich Asian Family, and it's like all like, and then like there was this other movie, and like the key like main character, she was like an Indian American actress, and we have all those things, and it's like fuck yes, like finally a group of people have something to relate to, plus like cis white people can enjoy a show, and then like maybe it clicks them, wow, this is a cast of all this talking about issues that those demographic go through. So it's like yes, but we're still in that time, even though there is all those shows now, there's still that like hot eye or that press when something is released, like where is the trans woman, where is the Asian person, where's the black person, where's this? Like I feel like there's a lot more eyes on everything, even though it's gotten better and it will continue to get better.
Awesome what you just said earlier, like be taking this photo, like this could be in a history book one day. And that's interesting that you like understand and realize that like everything that just happened last year is
gonna be something.
It's an iconic moment in American culture, and like it should be in history books. It should resonate. Like it was a crazy year, like, you know, not just with pandemics, but with, you know, Trump in office and all the bullshit that he did, all LGBT brothers and sisters getting together and trying to like fight for things, you know, the Black Lives Matters movement, like, you know, catapulted. Like, yeah, that's awesome.
And you think about it because it's like, thank God we have some photos like of like now everyone can like, you know, stand up and correct people and let people know about Marsha P. Johnson. Or these photos with the thing you guys are studying. Those little pieces of evidence of those little groups of people matter. And I think what's as important, you know, it was very like cis, white, gay dominated. And I think where we're going as a society, it's important to like open the eyes of everyone to be like, no, they're like, thank our black trans sisters or black brothers or Asian, like that it's not just this, and like opening the viewpoint, but also not shaming like cis white gay men into, you know, because I feel like they might think like, oh shit, like am I doing this? It's just the fact that like,
shame them.
I'm dead, you know, like, just like, but you know, like just cleaning the lens a little bit and being like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. Like being like, I'm dead. Like,
but it's not just about you.
Yeah, but they don't shun them. Yeah, like letting them know like it's not just about you. This is the bigger picture.
Learn and grow with
But it's so
it.
unfortunate. I mean, it's awesome that we're able to do this and like get together and talk, and it's it is unfortunate too that a lot of education does rely on POC people. It does rely a lot on trans individuals because like that history it was either erased or wasn't visible, so there's not a whole lot. We just spent a segment at UOKC talking about queer history in Kansas City and like all the artifacts and all the things that we were presented that we were able to look at, and there was such a huge room with all these tables that we could see all these tangible things, and there was like a tiny sector of Black LGBT culture, trans culture, and it was like, why? And he was like, well, number one, like as these people got older and they were dying, like the families were just going to throw all of this memorabilia and stuff away, and also there wasn't a lot of stuff that people held on to, so like it basically got erased. And to seeing that, like it sucks, but also it does take a burden sometimes. Like I'm, being a trans human, have to constantly educate people about certain things, and as a POC person, having to educate about certain things, and it's tasking. So I can understand sometimes, especially as a POC person, when white cis men get really down. They're like, well, you just don't like straight people, and I'm like, no, I'm just tired of educating your ignorant ass. And if you really cared, then like you would watch a fucking like documentary on YouTube, or like watch a fucking really fun show called Pose. Like learn some shit. Like why is it my job to always educate you on why this narrative and what you're doing is incorrect, and then like have this 20-minute conversation with you, because you're not the only person that I have to have this conversation with, because my whole life is always going to be brown and queer, so I'm constantly doing this, and it just gets very taxing.
I'd say it is too. They're not interested in changing. They're not interested in growing.
Well,
what you've learned.
I think part of the reason why they're not interested in changing or growing is because when you look at the way the educational system is here in America, it's very skewed in the point of the white cis man. And the reason why us as queer people, as trans LGBTQ like people, like the reason why we're so tired of educating other people is because we have to take the time to learn to educate ourselves about the things that are going on in our own community. And then beyond that, then it becomes like your job to actually express it out to everyone else who has any kind of like curiosity about it. But that's because these are things that aren't being taught or taught properly to us when we're younger. Like, it's like I was saying earlier, it's cool, taking a calculus A/B class, but how is this going to better my social interactions with people that I have to live my everyday life and existence with?
Maybe like I can relate it in like a drag sense, like you hosting like Sunday nights and you being a show host and like me being a show host. Now we're going to a place where it is important to see like people like you in power, or if someone the people in power are educated on POC issues and like trans issues, because because a lot of it is like I said, like who or whatever, because it's like say like we witnessed something together or whatever, but you're the manager or the boss. You're the first person they're going to listen to. You're the first person, so it's nice to know and have those people in power that are either going to fight for you and fight for the other communities, and or someone who is of that experience.
Because there's a lot of people that want to verbally complain or like complain via online about W, X, Y, and Z. It's specifically even in the industry that we're in. Like you wouldn't think there'd be a lot of separation when it comes to like drag queens and stuff, because it's all similar. Like we all do the same thing, like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like there's so much divide, and yesterday I think it was kind of different for me, because somebody came up to me when I was in the smoking area after don't smoke after the show.
I was there. I was there about
we're not homeless.
And there was someone who came up to me and was like, "Thank you for doing a really great job as a host." I said, "Yeah, thanks. Like, did you have fun?" And the person said, "Yes, I had a lot of fun. I took money and I promised myself that I would only give money to all the Black entertainers, and then I realized every single person in your cast was POC or trans, or you know what I mean?"
Yeah.
And he was like, it was such a different type of show, and like that's the type of thing that I personally have been fighting for, because I know when I first started, it was a lot of the same type of entertainers. And
you mean white? You can say white.
You can say white, yeah.
It was all a lot of really white old women.
Yeah.
Damn, she said old too. She said N. You could have just said white women. I'm old.
It was a bunch of white old women.
That's not what I said.
And you know, it was very hard when I first started to try and get even just like a free booking. And ever since, you know, I started, like, the first thing I did was grab Lana, who was like really interested in doing it too. And I was like, okay, everything that I do, you read. And the more opportunities, you know, that I got, the more that she got. And like, the more we expanded, like just getting a group of people together, like in this community, like we have a silly little group like in Kansas City.
Right.
There's
But,
like
like,
18 of us.
That's so cool though, because you were getting, like, you know, like with the opportunity you've gotten and the things I've gotten, and then like we further, and like our other friends and like vouching for them, you know. So it's like cool because it's like now you have like 2 Asian hosts, 2 people who are dealing with like the trans and gender experience hosting, and it's, you know what I mean. So like because of like. We're both like on that like spectrum, and plus dealing with Asian stuff, and so it's like now we're like one of the youngest, you and then me too, you know. But like now it's like now we can like fight for like everyone underneath us, and we get
or
it.
Below us.
You can keep me in check. Yeah,
definitely under.
And you keep
inside of
under. But like you keep me, you can always keep me in check. I can keep you in check. But like we're 2 voices that are now like to be looked up to that aren't just like cis and white.
That honestly, like, people didn't expect.
So yeah, that's cool.
We could have like wrecked this Kansas City scene by storm.
I know a whole wave of us
Like
too.
no, literally, because like the only Asian representation that I ever saw specifically in entertainment was Mulan. And to be honest, like if you look at a global map, you see the majority of the people in the entire world are Asian. Yet in media, there's less than 5% of us that are seen on any sort of media. And when I first started, you know, in drag, the only person that I saw that was Asian was Mulan, and I was like, damn, I want to be her.
No, and then like my thing
You know
is like as like a trans woman, besides even just the Asian thing, like because like trans is like the biggest journey hurdle of my life. I feel like seeing like, you know, like people like Riri and like Trayshawn Seymour and like Angel Ma and like all these like other trans entertainers, but it was like very few and far in between. But to see a trans woman hosting shit and like things like that, especially in a male dominated scene, it was like I want that. Like that's so important, and it feels so good to like be like a trans woman on a mic in front of like all like cis people most of the time. And like being like, yeah, drag comes in all forms. Like not only does it come in like black, white, Asian, all those things I am, but also like you have a woman in front of you talking to you of the trans experience, and like yes, we do drag, and like this is my take, and like, you know, it's like really cool, and like having trans people hosting, and it's like sickening.
And there's a total difference between, you know, the people that want to say something about it and then just post about it and then just bitch about it.
Yeah.
Like I feel like at least our generation of drag, of, you know, me, Lana, Carmela, Jaharia, like we actually did the work. Mm-hmm. Like the reason why you see us now is because we did the work.
Because I remember, I mean, girl, I started getting bullied in like 2nd grade for being like, oh, you're gay or you're feminine. But like that's like a big insecurity. I have like my sister and like my niece and nephew, they don't know that I'm trans. Like we haven't had that conversation with them because
she shows you that it's okay to, you know, have faith in other people and you know, to let them grow with you and to help other people. There's no reason to be, you know, jealous of W, X, Y, and Z, because if she's the one that taught me, like multiple lights shine brighter together than they do individually.